for Department of Public Health, Dr. Kathleen Toomey, our GEMA Director, Homer Bryson, and General Tom Carden. Also, we have Colonel Gary Val, Lieutenant Colonel Chris Wright, and Captain Nikki Renfro with the State Patrol. Department of Safety, we got the Department of Corrections Commissioner Tim Ward and the Assistant Commissioner Ahmad Holt with us today. Also, Department of Juvenile Justice Commissioner Tyrone Oliver, Department of Natural Resources Commissioner Mark Williams, GBI Director Vic Reynolds, and Special Agent in Charge Debbie Gardner. Before we get started on the weekly COVID-19 briefing, I wanted to take a few moments to address the protests that we've seen in communities across our nation. As I said over the weekend, this is a deeply emotional time not only in Georgia, but across America. We are gripped by a global pandemic. COVID-19 has threatened the health and well-being of our families and communities. Here in Georgia, this healthcare crisis has created economic hardship. Our unemployment numbers and uncertainty are sky high right now. And during this unprecedented moment, we have witnessed injustice with our own eyes. Georgians are filled with fear, anger, and righteous impatience. I realize that people are hurting and have more questions than answers right now. I support the right to peacefully protest, to honor the life of George Floyd, and to demand action. As the cradle of the civil rights movement, this place where peaceful protest ultimately shook up the status quo, the birthplace of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., this is a city where his legacy looms, urging us all to seek justice, love mercy, and treat others fairly with kindness and respect. And what started as a peaceful protest Friday ended in violence and destruction. A powerful moment was ultimately corrupted by some with a different agenda. And from the start, we have worked with Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms' office and local law enforcement to provide assistance and support. At their request, I have deployed the Georgia National Guard and hundreds of law enforcement officials to key locations across the city. And over the past several days, we have provided reinforcements to Atlanta, as well as communities across Georgia to enhance public safety and preserve peace. I cannot tell you how proud I am of the men and women who, at a moment's notice, were on the ground working to protect not only people, but property. And let me be clear, I am outraged that Georgians are now in harm's way because some are using this moment to riot, to loot, and to compromise the safety of our citizenry. I will tell you that violence and destruction is unacceptable. We will continue to do our part in conjunction with local leaders to plan, mobilize, and respond appropriately to threats that undermine our safety. We will do whatever is necessary to keep the peace. That being said, I still have hope that we can emerge from this stronger than ever before and more united than ever before. I truly believe that our best and brightest days are before us, and they are still to come. This is a moment to unite Georgians and find solutions to the problems that we face. We have overcome incredible challenges in this city and in this state together. I know that most are trying to protest in a productive way without compromising the safety of others. One story we were actually made aware of that happened yesterday. There was a group of peaceful protesters moving down Auburn Avenue as we neared the curfew. GPS troopers were on hand because that section of the street is close to the interstate. The troopers reported to the leader of that group to remind his fellow protesters of the curfew and asked them to leave once they got back to their cars after a successful, peaceful day. And that is exactly what they did. These are the kind of folks who are having their voices heard and inspiring real change. Them doing things the right way, but also speaking out against the injustice that we have witnessed. In regards to our law enforcement and state personnel, I want to thank all of the men and women who are working night and day with very little rest here in the State Operations Center and those that are out in the field of battle. I have never been more proud in my life, other than maybe when my children were born. We can't thank you enough for the service and sacrifice that you are giving to our state and our local as we speak. I also want to thank all of the local leaders, the members of the Georgia National Guard, our community leaders, and citizens who have helped us prepare for nonviolent protest and mobilize the right resources on the ground. Over the past few days, your partnership has been truly invaluable. On Thursday in Brunswick, as you know, Gregory and Travis McMichael will appear for preliminary hearings following their arrest for the death of Ahmaud Arbery. We will have a strong state law enforcement presence in the region to support the local government, including the Georgia State Patrol, the Department of Natural Resources officers, Georgia Guard troops, GEMA officials, and other related state agencies. And we will take the appropriate actions to hold bad actors accountable if they try to infiltrate what has been very peaceful gatherings in that community for well over a month now. And let me be clear once again, we will not tolerate disruptive or dangerous behavior, including criminal conduct. And we will put the safety of our citizens first. In a few moments, I'm going to ask Dr. Toomey to come up and address the expected impact of the protest over the weekend on our COVID-19 numbers, based on her expertise in public health and as an epidemiologist. We've obviously been monitoring the impact and are concerned about it. I want to let everyone know that we encourage all law enforcement, along with those that are participating in the demonstrations, to get tested immediately. Dr. Toomey is working closely with Dr. Paxson at the Fulton County Board of Health to establish pop-up testing sites next week. As we take measured steps forward to put Georgians back to work, we continue to see positive progress in our fight against COVID-19 with increased bed capacity, reduced hospitalizations, and a decreasing percentage of positive cases out of total cases. As we continue to be grateful for our partnerships with local hospitals who are on the front lines battling this virus and supporting their efforts, we are supporting their efforts. To date, we have distributed more than 18,440 vials of remdesivir, and we're receiving another 4,520 vials today. Hospitals continue to report initial positive results from this treatment, and we remain hopeful that more treatments like it are on the way. And while encouraging, we'll continue to monitor the key metrics. And as usual, we will continue to use data, science, and the advice of Dr. Toomey and her team to chart the path forward. Over the past 3 months, Dr. Toomey and her team and the District Health Director staff at the local departments of health have worked tirelessly to respond to COVID-19. They have established 150 testing sites, conducted more than 151,000 tests, and continue to be an integral part of our response to this crisis. And their hard work certainly continues. One thing that I did want to make you aware of is that you may see a temporary decline in the number of tests administered due to the National Guard's role in assisting local law enforcement with the recent protest activities. These men and women in uniform will return to fulfill their original mission when the streets are safe. Today, several new improvements were made at on the DPH COVID-19 Daily Status Report page. As I've said numerous times, citizens and members of the press need accessible, timely, and accurate data. These changes will make the DPH webpage more user-friendly while providing a comprehensive picture of where we are in our fight against COVID-19. The webpage will now update once daily at 3 p.m. Again, the updates will now start at 3 p.m., allowing DPH officials more time to process and confirm lab and public health lab reports on cases. DPH has reordered some key metrics to make the data more easily digestible, and the website now provides a breakdown of testing based on molecular and serological test, along with the percent positive for each type of test. As well, the demographic charts have been redesigned to clearly present the data in a more user-friendly manner. And before I turn it over to Dr. Toomey, I want to renew a few calls of action. Please continue to follow advice and mitigate your risk of exposure. We're still battling a pandemic, and we need to stay vigilant. Continue to keep your distance, wash your hands, and do all of the other things that we have been saying for weeks and weeks now. A little bit of good news from the last couple of weeks of my urging and others. We are starting to see more patients return for regular screenings, but we're also seeing an increase in more serious diagnoses because people have delayed their medical intervention. So again, I want to all Georgians, don't skip your medical appointments. If you put them off, please reschedule now. Do not take your individual health for granted. There are medical facilities all across the state, whether private practice, hospitals, or the like, are ready for you to come back in a safe way. I would urge you to call them or get in touch with them on the way to do that will prioritize your personal health. Again, we are in this fight together, the fight against the coronavirus, the fight to revive our economy, and the fight to ensure liberty and justice for all. I know for one that I will continue to keep the men and women who these folks, many of them, are managing and have been the last several days on the front line of a lot of districts. I want to thank them, and I want to thank all of those that are under their leadership, that are out there now, that are at home resting and will be back later tonight, who will be here tomorrow and the next day and the next day, until we can get back to a normal place in this state, in this country, of not having to defend our streets, our citizens, and our storefronts from unruly people. These are the resilient people. I've been in here every night with them, long into the morning. If those people that are unruly out there think that we will lay down and we will quit, you are in the wrong state. So thank you. You will continue to be in my prayers. And I will continue to pray for peace and justice and a better and brighter tomorrow. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Toomey.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone here in the room and behind me for the work that you're doing to keep all of Georgia safe. I've been asked many times today and over the last several days about what could this impact be of demonstrations and mass gatherings on a pandemic. And I think this situation is no different than any other situation we have talked about. When you have this many people gathered together in close proximity, you run the risk of viral transmission. I think you add to that the fact that individuals have come from out of state where they may be have even higher rates of infection and may be bringing it into our state and transmitting it as well. And so I think that we need to be very vigilant. We are proactively doing our analysis of our hotspots, because the situation is here not only in Atlanta, but all the other locations where there have been peaceful protests, but also disruptions. We need to follow that and monitor that quickly. One of the things that we have done is, as the governor said, is we've reached out to the community at large, because we've been asked by legislators and others to ensure that we provide testing for the demonstrators. And we do that willingly and gladly, and we'll set up one or more test sites as necessary to ensure that they are protected and identify any cases early. We are also proactively reached out to Mayor Keisha Lance Bottom's office, and with her approvals, we are moving forward with setting up testing for her first responders, both Atlanta Police and Fire, and others who may have been potentially exposed. And we hope to do that as early as next week in conjunction with the mayor's office. And last but not least, I have reached out and hope to set up testing sites for the state police, as well as National Guard and others who may be part of this response team. We want to ensure that everyone who may be exposed unwittingly, also has access to testing quickly, and that we can assist in this time to mitigate any potential spread from this demonstration. We want to avoid these disruptions, but most of all, in addition, we want to ensure that the pandemic doesn't spread because of this. Thank you so much.
Greg, you want to start us off?
Yeah. Do I need to give her a microphone or?
No, you're good. Unless all the reporters want to hear your question.
Governor, what do you plan to do in terms of the George Floyd protests to reach out to some of the demonstrators and address their concerns? And is there a potential for legislation this session to address those concerns?
Well, certainly, on the legislative session part of it, look, there's all kind of things that are flying around right now, and our office is open to all of them. I've said that before and continue to say that. From my personal standpoint, I'm open to that as well. And we have some folks that are starting to think about that. But I'll be honest with you, our number one priority right now has been keeping our people safe and keeping the protesters safe, quite honestly, because what we're seeing on the streets, if you have a bunch of people that are really upset, and I understand that. As I mentioned in my remarks, we've all seen injustice with our own eyes. If anybody's watched the video of Mr. Floyd, and we understand the reason that people are mad and they're upset. And the thing is, a lot of people were upset and worried, and there was a lot of tension even before this happened because of the pandemic. So it's just an unusual time in our state, in our country. And we have been I've been talking back and forth with a lot of the folks that are helping, well, I wouldn't say a lot, but some of the folks that are organizing the protests. We're talking to them on the ground every day. They've actually been very helpful communicating with me to let me know what groups are on the ground that are peaceful, and then which are groups that they have concerns about that they don't want their folks being too close to because they know that they're unruly. And that doesn't go just for Atlanta. That goes for other parts of the state today as well. So that is kind of my posture right now.
When the situation is calm, do you intend to have a dialogue with the organizers of these protests to hear out their concerns?
Well, I'm certainly open to having a dialogue with anybody that wants to have that, if they're willing to do it in a productive way. I mean, I think that's what government's all about. I've always done that. When I was Secretary of State, I did it as a state senator, and I look forward to continuing to do that as governor. Richard?
Governor, we've heard many theories of who may or may not be behind this, either in GMO or GBI or DPH, or rather DPS. Have we heard, is there any single organized group behind it? Multiple organized groups? Or is it just a group of anarchists who decided to get together and do this?
Yeah, I've been trying to get where I could get something in my speech today to mention that directly, and I couldn't get the green light to do that because I don't know that we've got confirmation. I might just let Vic or his team, if y'all want to answer what you've been tracking and what you're still working on.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Vic Reynolds, the GBI director. We certainly have some intelligence indicating various groups that are here, both through social media that our intelligence unit reviews on an hourly basis since this situation started, and also regarding information about people who are here on the ground that we know belong to certain organizations. I don't want to misspeak or speak on something we're not categorically sure of now, but I will tell you that we are convinced that based on the information intelligence we have, there are individuals here from various groups around the country, a lot of which are bent primarily on destruction and violence. And so we're seeing that both in our intelligence gathering, our social media posts that we review daily, and what our agents and various officers have seen actually boots on the ground. Yes, sir. Thank you, Governor.
Stephen, this question's for Dr. Toomey. On the newly updated website, it says there are 48,207 confirmed cases, but then right below it with a different type of testing, those two numbers don't add up to the number that's on the top. So I was hoping you could explain where those numbers come from before other people start asking.
All right, the website went up at 3. I haven't seen it yet, but the tests are broken up into the serologic tests are in one category, the PCR or the COVID genetic test is in another category, and total tests are all those two tests together. Positives are only the PCR tests. We don't count the serology tests in any positives. But the total tests would include everything, but you've broken out into the serologic tests and the PCR tests, which are the tests for infection now versus tests for past infection.
Well, if that's true, those numbers still don't add up to be the same.
I'll have to look, because you beat me to the website. I was preparing for the press conference, and it I think went live just an hour ago or less.
And Ben?
Governor Kemp, two quick questions, if I might. President Trump last night called for more law enforcement presence across the country. Do you see any need for more law enforcement, either police, National Guard, or federal military assistance from what have already been called up?
Here in Georgia?
Here in Georgia, excuse me,
No,
yes.
no, I do not. You know, if General Carden tells me we need something, I'll start worrying about it. But I don't think he's even close to telling me that we need anything, do you, General?
No, sir.
Okay.
Sorry, a follow-up question. Has Georgia been asked to send National Guard troops to Washington, D.C.? If so, are we doing that? How many?
I don't know if we've gotten a formal request. I can let General Carden mention or speak more to that. I mean, we certainly stand willing to work with the president. They have certainly been very gracious in what they have allowed us to do with the Guard during the COVID-19 response. I believe the Georgia National Guard's done as much as any guard across the country in response to COVID-19, and the administration's support has been a big part of that from a financial standpoint, but just also just having the ability to do that. And Georgia has a long track record of supporting our country with military support from the National Guard, and we'll continue to do so, whether that's building the wall like General John King, our insurance commissioner, was part of his mission, the folks that we've had over in Iraq and Afghanistan that I've sent off and welcomed back to this great state, and we'll continue to do so if there's another mission. But do you have anything else on that, General?
Thanks. You know, I'll just echo what the governor said. I mean, there's been some discussion about how many National Guard troops might be needed to help in the District of Columbia, but there's been no formal request, if you will, for those numbers. But you know, under the governor's leadership, we stand ready to do whatever we're told to do. I mean, we've been authorized up to 3,000. There are 15,000 men and women in your National Guard, so we've got plenty of capability on the table if it's required. I hope that answers your question.
Arch?
and certainly not all the cops. There are a lot of cops that are passionate. We got stuck in that commotion for an hour, and a lot of the protesters were simply saying, why are we being arrested? What do you want to tell some of those cops who are arresting journalists and citizens for just peacefully protesting? 'Cause many of them are
Well,
frustrated.
first of all, Arch, I don't believe we arrested a journalist.
An AJC reporter was telling me had.
Well, being held is a lot different than being arrested. I've asked Commissioner Williams to look into that. But what specifically, you know, I need to know more specifics about what you're talking about at City Hall as to why people were being arrested. And who was,
The block, and they couldn't get out. So basically, these people were saying they were protesting. We were stuck in there for an hour, and they didn't know why. So I think you tweeted there were 55 arrests. Do you know why they were arrested?
this is the same group that went on the interstate?
We were not on the interstate by then.
What time was this now?
This was shortly after our interview with you and Dr. Toomey, about 4 o'clock.
And where were you again?
It was the block of Washington and Trinity. So there were cops on all 4 sides. People just could not get out.
Were they Atlanta Police Department?
Atlanta Police, the National Guard. Yeah, there was
Okay, who was making the arrest?
Atlanta Police.
Okay, have you asked the mayor that?
We've asked the
Or
mayor,
the
we've asked
chief,
the
and what did they tell you? Because I'm not in
We've
charge.
not heard a response.
Well,
We're just asking.
I'm not in charge of the Atlanta Police Department. We're serving in a backup role. I don't believe there's any state in the country that's done as much as we have to support a major city like Atlanta. Quite honestly, sometimes at the detriment of other parts of our state. You know, we could have our troopers right now on our highways. But if there's a specific reason that the Atlanta Police Department were arresting people, I know for a fact I saw people laying down in the middle of the street in front of City Hall. And I would hope that you would agree with me that that's not a good thing for people to do. It's against the law, I would think, in the city. I know it going on the interstate is against state law. It's dangerous for the people that are doing that, and it ties up a lot of police resources to have to deal with situations like that. Not to mention our friends that have been working and may have been trying to get home at that hour, who are very upset, and they get frustrated, which causes the potential protesters harm for laying in the road. And this is the point of what is so difficult about this mission that I quite honestly think citizens need to understand. We have no problem. We have supported for weeks in this state peaceful protest. You haven't heard about any of these problems in Brunswick, Georgia, where Captain King of the Georgia State Patrol and Neil Jump, the sheriff down there, have been working with the local community, the organizers, to have peaceful protests, to protect them with a heavy law enforcement presence that nobody could see. So nobody felt threatened, so we could support their activities to gather and call for justice, as they should. And that is exactly what I told Vic Reynolds to do, and is exactly what I believe Joy at Homes will do. But we have to have people follow the law. And when they don't, it puts us in a bad spot. And when you have unruly people that are mixing in, and you see them on camera loading rocks in their backpack, loading wood in their backpack, in that same area by the Capitol where we had to shoot tear gas because a car was parked jackknife in the middle of an intersection, and the guy got out and is standing up on the hood of the car, creating disruption. And then people in the background are putting on additional clothing. They're stealing cones off the street to direct traffic so that when the tear gas goes out, they can sit the cone on the tear gas and pour a bottle of water on it to put it out. Those are not people here to peacefully protest. They are here to disrupt, to injure the men and women that are on the streets trying to keep the peaceful protesters safe. They're carrying around gallons of milk because they're not going to run when the gas hits and go home after the curfew. They're going to go pick the gas up and throw it back at the law enforcement officials. It simply would be doing nothing if they had abided by the curfew. That is what we're asking people to do. We are in a very precarious point right now because you have one or two people that are going to cause an instance like we've seen in other states where somebody gets shot. We had a perfectly innocent Atlanta police officer get hit on a four-wheeler You should watch the video on Facebook. It is a miracle he is alive. And he's alive because we had the National Guard there. And their medic team got there probably in less than a minute or two, tourniqueted him, and the Atlanta police blocked every intersection to get him to Grady. And we continue to pray for him. But that is why we need people to work with us on organized, peaceful protest. And don't lie down in the street. Nobody had any issues moving around yesterday until they started lying down or getting on the interstate. I mean, that is not a safe environment. It's not safe. It's not fair to other citizens who are trying to get home or trying to get their kids out of harm's way.
Jamie?
This is a question for Colonel Bowers, General Carden. Can you talk about the fatigue factor for your folks, not just physical fatigue, but mental fatigue, having to be out there doing this every night?
Thank you. We're giving them rest as often as we can, providing them meals, hydration. They're holding up good. This is what we train to do, and we keep that in mind, their health in mind. So they're holding up good. Mentally, they're good. The governor and I spoke with a crowd of them last night at the Capitol. Their spirits are high. They're here because we ask them to, but in mind and spirit, they're here also.
With respect to the National Guard soldiers, I'm glad you asked that question. I had that conversation with our leaders today. You know, fatigue sometimes impairs judgment, and it's a concern for me. And so our leaders are working every day to manage the workflow, how long people are out there, what we provide to them with respect to meals and appropriate hydration, because the last thing we want is for somebody to be frustrated and fatigued and make a bad decision. Another point that we emphasize every day is the emotional stress. There are a number, quite a large percentage of your National Guard that don't look like me. And so this is hurtful to them to be doing this mission. The personnel, the equipment, and the training that the United States invests in its National Guard is primarily designed to protect us from a foreign adversary. And today, we're asking those same men and women to go protect one American from another. So that's a tough mission for them. I think they're doing very well with respect to how they're holding up right now. But thanks for that question.
This is a two-pronged question. Governor, this may be for you or Vic Reynolds. Do we have any numbers about how many people from out of state are coming in? Any idea roughly about numbers?
Thank you for the question. We don't have an exact number. I will tell you that our GSAT unit, which is our Intelligence Sharing and Analysis Center, is currently doing an evaluation of the 300 or so arrests that have been made to determine where those individuals are from. We have seen individuals from out of state. We have seen some of the people arrested from out of state that we know of from the first night or two. But our analysis center should have that evaluation done hopefully by tomorrow, so we'll have a breakdown of where everybody is from.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then also, in regards to the RNC convention, again, North Carolina came out today and said it's very unlikely that they'll get what they need. Do you have any more comment towards the convention happening here, possibly?
No, I literally just saw that right before I walked out of the Capitol to come over here. I didn't even have time to read the article, so I don't really know a whole lot about that.
And would you suggest, how would you suggest rioting in the right way for people who are trying to do it peacefully? Sorry, not right in the right way, protest in the right way, I should say.
Thought we were fixing to have to come after you out there. You know, look, there's plenty of people that's been doing that in this state for decades. They've been doing it this week peacefully, and this whole, you know, last month peacefully in our state. It's not hard to do. We help, you know, we'll help the organizers. We'll tell them what we're looking for. They've been telling us, quite honestly, the folks that we've been working with and people that we have on the ground. Captain Renfro, she works this district all the time for the State Patrol. She's in communication with APD and may want to add something to this. But, you know, I've asked, I was talking to a contact that I've been in communication with. I can't remember if it's since Thursday or Friday, but it was definitely last week. with the NAACP, and they have been letting me know, you know, what protests are going on that they're supporting that are peaceful and the right kind of actors that want justice and are doing this for the right reasons. And they're also telling me about the folks in the protests that they're concerned about. I called them today about one that we weren't real sure about and got some feedback on that. So it is not hard for us to work together. And I think you've seen that on the ground. I mean, we're not out to, we don't want to arrest anybody. I can assure you when the State Patrol has to make an arrest, we got to fill out a report. You know, it takes a person off of the line. We just soon not do that. We want people to protest and let their voice be heard in the right way and within respect to the law and local ordinances. So I would just encourage them to reach out to us in the city of Atlanta on what it is they want to do, when they want to do it. I know we have protests at the Capitol all the time, and we're glad to work with those folks. But I would also urge them, as they have been doing, many of them, and I'm thankful, I said that in remarks, I'm thankful for those individuals to continue to give us your feedback on who you're worried about. Because the hard part of this job is when things start breaking loose, late at night, right before the curfew, you got the good actors that are wanting to get out of there and not getting in any trouble, and you have the bad ones that are suiting up and getting ready and trying to figure out who's who and how you go in there and get them out of there and arrest them and keep everybody else safe that is simply there for the right reasons. I mean, that is what is tough about this job. I've been in here watching it every night, and I've seen it. I've felt the intensity of it, and I've also felt the relief of it, thankfully, when it calmed down. And I just pray it continues that way in our state.
And Claire?
Good afternoon, Governor. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that this question is secondary to all the social justice issues we're facing and safety issues right now. But with so many people working 24/7 with all of this going on, do you have any idea what the current cost is and whether we may have any federal assistance as far as that's concerned?
Yeah, I have no idea on the federal assistance. You know, I mentioned the Trump administration and their support for our use of the Georgia National Guard and the way that they're doing it with the 502 designation has been invaluable, not only from a person power issue, but financially for our state. And I'm grateful for that. You know, I don't think anybody's started talking about federal assistance for, you know, for states or cities for the response. And quite honestly, that hasn't been on the top of my worry list. We'll have to deal with that when we get through this. But there's definitely, I mean, you can watch it every night. There's definitely a cost to it. And I know there is to the cities as well.
Governor, before the pandemic, when we would have protests, years ago of large size, you couldn't be wearing a mask or any kind of facial covering because of Georgia's mask law. Obviously, that was rescinded because of the pandemic. But I am hearing from some law enforcement on the front lines, they are worried that the masks may be emboldening some of the troublemakers because they can conceal their identity a little bit more. Is that something you're concerned about? And is there really anything that you can do about it?
Well, there's not anything I can do about it unless Dr. Toomey wants me to tell everybody not to wear a mask. I don't think she's going to do that.
There's a right time for everything. That's not it.
But I haven't. I mean, until, our law enforcement folks here in the room or others start telling me that's an issue, I haven't been worried about that.
All right. Well, thanks, folks.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you all.
Governor Brian Kemp just wrapping up remarks on the state's response to COVID-19 and the protests we have been watching over the last few days. Governor Kemp said while many have demonstrated peacefully, he will do whatever it takes to keep the peace throughout Georgia. He warned there will be a strong law enforcement presence in Brunswick later this week for protests around the hearings for the father and son charged in the death of Ahmaud Arbery. And when it comes to COVID-19, he urged anyone who's been protesting or serving in some sort of a law enforcement capacity out there to go out and get tested. He said Dr. Kathleen Toomey is working with Fulton County to create pop-up testing locations for them to try and find any new cases early. We'll have much more on the governor's remarks ahead when we continue our broadcasting and also on 11alive.com.
Well, tonight on 11 Alive, we are talking about continued protests in downtown Atlanta as we get ready to approach the top of the 5 o'clock hour. We see bicycle patrol units are out there face to face with protesters tonight in downtown Atlanta. This is making night 5 of protests, and we do understand the mayor has issued that 9 p.m. curfew again for the city of Atlanta. Allowing their voices to be heard. But as Governor Kemp just mentioned, they support these efforts as long as they remain peaceful. And if not, they will continue to deploy the Georgia National Guard along with local law enforcement in a heavy presence. Over the past few nights, we've seen peaceful protests that only tend to reach a point of contention when it's time to enact the curfew. So we are going to continue to monitor this closely, knowing that that curfew is indeed in effect tonight again at 9 p.m.
Governor Kemp also saying during his remarks that you were just listening to that many of the protesters have been helpful in terms of sharing information about some others out there in the midst of the crowd that were being unruly in Atlanta and in other cities within our state. He said that he is open to having a dialogue with anyone who wants to. That's part of the government. He says as long as it is productive. Now, in speaking about some of those who might be out in these crowds causing trouble, we also did hear from the director of the GBI, Vic Reynolds. He said that they do have some intelligence about bad actors in the crowd that are on the ground that belong to some organizations from various group intent on destruction, but they didn't go into a lot of detail. He said that they have agents that are evaluating the arrests that we have seen over the last few days to see where these people are from, and hopefully we will be getting some of that information to bring you in the next few days.
Mayor Bottoms and mayors all over the country have talked about not thinking that the bulk of these protesters are from their area, and that's why they're going to go through the list of the more than 300 arrests to get some sort of assessment to see where everyone is from and if they are indeed from the city of Atlanta or if they are those bad actors that came from out of town. As we watch this protest here unfold live downtown Atlanta, we are seeing that people are again holding up their signs, and the crowd really grew within the last hour or so since our crews arrived there on the scene.
And tonight on 11 Alive, we have different voices united under one message. We hear from people all over Atlanta who tell us why they are rallying for George Floyd.
And later,
we were going to see a guy die, and that's again what started this. It's not
after
how we
people
are here.
pounced there on the cab. But first tonight, another curfew in place in the city of Atlanta. The mayor ordering everyone off the streets from 9 p.m. until the sun comes up tomorrow. MARTA service, however, will still operate as normal.
This comes after now 5 straight days of protest over the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Today, 6 Atlanta police officers are facing charges, seen on video tasing 2 college students and pulling them from their car Saturday night. The students say they weren't even participating in the protests at the time. 11 Alive's Doug Richards has more on the charges and the evidence against those officers.
This incident happened near one of the main entrances of Centennial Olympic Park during a demonstration protesting brutal treatment by police. The young man behind the wheel of this car drew attention from police as he tried to record cell phone video of Saturday's demonstration. He slowly drove up. But Officer Ivory Streeter's body cam video shows Streeter chasing the car. Then body cam video shows another officer hitting the car window with a baton. Then police confront the passenger, Tanaya Pilgrim, who doesn't exit immediately because the car is moving. The video shows Officer Mark Gardner responding with his taser.
It was a vicious act. The tasing, it went on for some time while she was shaking and screaming.
Seconds later, the driver, Messiah Young, gets the same treatment through a broken car window. He's later thrown to the asphalt, breaking his wrist and opening a gash requiring 21 stitches, according to Fulton DA Paul Howard.
And no firearm was ever located in the vehicle.
Howard says his office is charging 4 police officers, Lonnie Hood, Willie Sauls, Ivory Streeter, and Mark Gardner, with felony aggravated assault and other charges. Officers Armand Jones and Roland Cloud face lesser charges in the same incident.
I feel a little safer now that these monsters are off of the street and no longer able to terrorize anyone else from this point on.
I hope every police officer who thinks it's okay to drag someone, beat someone, do all this stuff because they're cops, I hope they're all gonna be held accountable as well. And be safe, everyone, please.
APD fired Officers Streeter and Gardner the next day. The DA says that the 6 police officers have until Friday to turn themselves in to the city jail.
Ahead at 5:30, we are taking a closer look at the body camera video in this case, which caught several different angles of what happened. Uplate anchor and former Oakland officer Ron Jones will join us as well to give us his perspective. Today, mothers of children who died amid allegations of brutality gathered on the steps of the state capitol. They spoke about accountability for law enforcement. Jamarian Robinson's mother spoke passionately about her son's death. In 2016, a medical examiner's report said U.S. Marshals shot him 59 times in the back while serving an arrest warrant. The DOJ quickly cleared the officers, but the Fulton DA is reviewing the case. And Sally Tilson's mother also spoke. The 22-year-old from Conyards died from blood clots related to dehydration. He was locked in solitary confinement at the Rockdale County Jail in 2018. His family says he suffered from mental health issues. A grand jury found the staff as a whole failed to recognize and address the decline in his physical and mental state. Theirs were just some of the stories shared. Their message: something needs to be done now.
We are tired. We are tired of standing in front of cameras and crying and begging for justice.
People don't understand the emotions that these families are feeling because you have never been there when you have a son, a grandson, a daughter, a husband, or a father been shot.
Later in the show, we're going to hear from the mother of George Floyd's 6-year-old daughter for the first time. We are also asking those of you out protesting to share your thoughts and what you think needs to change. Let us know why you are protesting. You can give us a call at the number on your screen, 678-765-9514, and leave a voicemail. Make sure you leave us your name and the best way for us to get in touch with you. We'll hear some of your responses coming up.
I'm meteorologist Chris Holcomb from the 11 Alive Storm Trackers, where we are watching dry weather conditions out there today. We're in a really nice weather pattern right now, but that is going to change as we're going to begin to see a little more moisture that's going to start feeding into our area. We have some of that right now in the Gulf Coast region, and we're likely going to see more of that tropical moisture feeding our way as we now have a brand new tropical storm that is down into the Bay of Campeche in the Gulf of Mexico. Meanwhile, up in Blue Ridge right now looking great, where we have plenty of blue skies in that area. Watch what we have out there right now. Tropical Storm Cristobal, which has winds of 40 miles an hour, gusting to 50 miles an hour. The storm is way down here. Stay with us. We're going to take a closer look at this forecast track as it moves more up to the north, and we'll let you know if this will have any impact in our forecast as we head toward the weekend. Let me get a different graphic, sorry. So, am I not doing anything now until 5?